Hey guys, and welcome back to the channel. Well, today I want to do a review on my main camera, which is the R6 Mark II. Let me pick it up. There it is right there. And just give you some of my thoughts after having used the camera now for about 3 months as my main photography and hybrid camera. And just tell you some of the reasons why I upgraded, my thoughts about the camera, and why you might want to consider buying this camera in 2024 if you're looking to upgrade or even just buy your first professional camera. Okay, so reason number one why you might want to consider the R6 Mark II is the autofocus performance. Now this uses the new dual pixel autofocus 2 inherited down from the R3 Canon camera. And this new autofocus system is amazing. It's super fast, super accurate, and much like the R6 Mark I, I found that with the R6 Mark II, it just locks on, and I don't really have to worry about autofocus anymore, which frees me up as a shooter to concentrate on framing my subject and also interacting with my model or my subject, which is very important to me as a sort of portrait people event photographer. I'm finding myself more and more these days shooting with the camera out and using the back screen. I just find that helps me sometimes to find different and more creative ways of framing situations and people within situations. I do still use the viewfinder, but I just find myself using that more now that I can trust the autofocus and I don't really have to be stressing about, okay, is it on the eye or whatever. Okay, so I think that's definitely a plus for me, and just having it be to the level where I really don't think about it anymore once I set it up, and pretty much I've got it on the default settings that it comes with. So for me personally, I use the whole area autofocus. Now there are many other options, but for me, I just trust the camera so much that I just leave it on whole area autofocus and don't really change that. If for some reason I do need to focus on a specific object or something, I just touch the screen. I have that set up and it will focus on that and lock on. Okay, so reason number two is going to be the image quality out of the R6 Mark II. And for me, this is probably one of the more important factors in buying a camera. I really think you need to like the look of the files coming out of the camera. Some people, this isn't as big an issue and they can work with any files from any camera and make them look how they want. I can do that to some extent, but I find it much easier if I like the files coming out of the camera and I have to do minimal tweaking. That's one of the reasons why I've always shot Canon. Since the very start. I had a bridge camera, a Nikon bridge camera, when I first got into photography, when my daughter was born, but ever since then I've stuck with Canon, and it's just really, honestly, I know people say it and it's a trope and everything, but for that Canon color science and the way it makes people look, okay, and being primarily a people photography focused endeavor that I've been on, that's really important to me. I love the R6 Mark II files. I find that they're very flexible, much more flexible than some of the files from the older generations of Canons like the 5D Mark IV or the EOS R. There's a lot of flexibility, there's a lot of depth in them. I like the dynamic range. Now I know it's not going to be on the same level as something like a Sony a7 IV, but for my needs, it's perfectly fine, and I don't ever find myself in situations where I'm like, oh my god, I wish I had more dynamic range. That's not really a problem for me. Now if I was more of a landscape photography person, maybe that would be, but primarily shooting people, I'm much more worried about skin tones and the way that the camera captures human subjects. Okay, now just on that point too, the sensor is 24 megapixels. For me, that's perfect. I like a sensor for shooting people somewhere between 20 and 30 megapixels. That for me is where I want to be, and I think that this R6 Mark II at 24 megapixels really nails it. It's the perfect, for me, the perfect balance between ISO performance and resolution. It has better ISO performance than my EOS R had, and it has like better resolution than the R6. Now, I never found the R6 Mark I super lacking. Like, I always thought 20 megapixels was enough when I was shooting with it, but just having that little bit extra, I don't know if it's a psychological thing, but for me, I like it. And I think that this camera really strikes that perfect balance between resolution and ISO performance. Okay, so talking about ISO performance, because I know that this is a big one, it's always been a big one for me, but I've got to say, since changing to the EOS R6 Mark II, I no longer really worry about ISO, and that sounds sort of crazy. I think this is just, with these new sensors, I just don't worry about it. Now, I have changed the way that I've really started shooting on this camera, and it started with the EOS R6 Mark I, where I've switched from shooting totally manual, which I did for many years on the EOS R, and I've switched to shooting in aperture priority with auto ISO and setting my minimum shutter speed. Mine's set to 500 because I'm shooting people, and then setting my range. Mine is set to from 100 to 6400 because that covers what my needs easily. Shooting with fast primes and mainly shooting between f1.4 and 2.8, maybe f4. Okay, I find that frees me up now to, instead of focusing on what my settings are, I'm focusing on my frame, putting my subject in the frame, and also, this is a very important thing for me, being able to interact with my subject, my model, or my client, and get the best out of the situation. It's really freed me up to really focus on that aspect of photography more, and I think that it has taken my photography to another level. Now, is the ISO performance good? Yes, it is, but I have to say that I've got to give it the biggest compliment, which is that I just don't even think about it anymore. I have it set now. I recently did a shoot where I started about 4 o'clock in the afternoon and went all the way through to blue hour, and I just left it on auto ISO. Now, when I brought I think my ISO was hovering mainly between like 400 and 1600 ISO, and towards the end of the shoot it might have been bumping up to 3200 ISO. But when I brought the files in and edited them, I didn't have to add noise reduction or anything to any of the files, and I didn't notice any difference in the files. Like, I didn't see a file and go, oh, this must be the 3200 ISO file because it looks terrible. I just didn't notice. I just processed them all the way I process the files. I batch process them and then go through and individually tweak, and yeah, there was no problems whatsoever. So for me, that's a great time saver. And I know that the ISO, some of the noise programs that are out there now for cleaning up noise and stuff are fantastic, and I guess that would be useful in extreme situations. But for me, for what I'm shooting, I don't even really worry about noise and ISO anymore. I just have the camera set to auto, set my minimum shutter speed, and I shoot away, and I haven't had a problem as of yet. And I've been shooting in like really low light situations, so I mean, I'd have to literally be shooting in the dark, I think, to have to worry about it, which I'm not going to do. Okay, so the next point I want to touch on is just the build quality of the camera. Now, it's got some features that the R6 Mark I doesn't have or didn't have, and of course that's the mode dial for going between photo and video, and I think that's great and that's really important. I'm not in love with having it on the left side, but I've gotten used to it, and you know, it's better than not having a mode dial. I do like the R7, how it's got it on the power switch, and I'm not sure why they didn't do that on this camera, but you know what, it works and it's functional, and so there you go. Other dials, you've got the power button where it's got off, lock, and on. It's growing on me. I do like having the lock there. It can work pretty well in certain situations where you do need to lock off some of those functions, which you can do customize in the camera. It's got, you know, your joystick and all your other dials. I will say I am in love with having the 3 dials again, which I haven't had since the 5D Mark III, and I'm loving that, and I don't want to go back. When I use my R7, it's mainly for video, so it's not as big of an issue, but I do love having those 3 dials and being able to have that real control of the camera on the fly. Even though I'm shooting mainly, you know, in aperture priority, it's still nice to have those extra dials. You've got all your buttons that you can set up with different custom functions and things. I have them assigned for different things for both photo and video, and that's great that you can separate them up and really customize the camera to do what you want it to do. The screen is adequate. It's not as good as the EOS R, but it's fine. The viewfinder is nice. There's nicer ones out there, but for what I'm doing for this price point, I think it's appropriate. You know, some people say that they don't like having the dials and things. After shooting on the EOS R for so long and having like the screen and stuff there, which I did like, and you know, it's cool being able to see your settings and stuff, but personally I like dials. Okay, I like big dials, and I can't deny. All right, I like the dials. I like just being able to look down and see, oh yeah, I'm on C3 and I know what that means. So that some people, I haven't shot with the R5, and I know the R5 has some unique situations where you can set things up with different buttons and things, but I like dials. Okay, call me dumb, but I like dials. Okay, so next is going to be the video features and also the IBIS. I think that goes into that too. I don't think too many people consider IBIS when they're considering photography, but I actually think that it goes both ways, and I find it useful for both photography and for video. The IBIS in this is good. Of course, you do get those wobbles on the wide end if you're using anything. I'd say even a 35mm, sometimes you can get wobbles. I like it for longer focal lengths if I'm shooting video, and sometimes if I'm shooting wider, I might actually even turn it off and then stabilize in post. In DaVinci, I'm shooting DaVinci, but it's nice to have it there and to have that option. It's nice to have the 3 different customizable custom functions on the mode dial there, so that combined with the manual setting gives you 4 different fully customizable video settings that you can have set up ready to go. And as someone that's but exploring more video shooting and really getting into that, I love that. Okay, I love that on the R7. It's the same sort of thing, and having that on this more professional camera, it's great for when I'm doing hybrid shooting and I just need to quickly switch, and I can know, okay, look, I've got C1 set up, that's just my main one. Okay, now I've got like a 50mm, but I want to crop in more. I can go to C2, that's my 1.6 crop setting, and then I've got an extra one there that if I know that I'm going to be shooting in a certain situation, I need some sort of customized function, I can set that up and have it ready to go. Now, lastly, it's just going to be the price and the value for what you're getting in the camera. Okay, I bought this camera about $3,000 Australian dollars. I'm not sure how that relates with US prices or whatnot. It's been a while since I've checked out the exchange rate. But for me, for a camera that I'm looking at using for 3 to 5 years, I think that's really good value for money. Now, I was looking at the Sony a7 IV at the same time when I bought this camera, and it was selling, I think, for $3,500. And it totally depends on what ecosystem you're in, what lenses you own, and a whole bunch of other factors. But for me, I was considering switching to Sony, and I'm glad that I didn't, because I think this camera really covers all my needs. And for a while there, I was getting a little bit hesitant to invest any more money into Canon, because I just sort of felt that maybe it was time to switch. Maybe I couldn't get my needs met for what I wanted to do in Canon. But I'm really happy with the camera. I haven't had to sell everything and move over to Sony, and I'm not saying Sonys aren't great cameras, they are, but I think this is one of the best hybrid photo video cameras you can buy. And it's reasonably affordable. I know $3,000 isn't cheap, but for the value that you're getting, I think it's a really good value proposition. I haven't had any overheating issues with the camera. It's not a cinema camera. It doesn't have a fan in it, so that's always something to remember. But I haven't personally had any overheating problems with it, and at this point I've shot quite extensively video clips with it. So I'm mainly doing hybrid shooting where I'm shooting photos, and I might shoot 5 minutes of video and then do photos again, and that's non-stop. That's not without taking a break, and doing that for an hour and a half, nearly 2 hours. Never even got a heating warning. So I mean, to me, I'm happy with that. I know when I used to shoot with the R6 Mark I, it did get quite warm in the hand. I never had it shut down or shut off, but it did get quite warm. When you're holding it, felt like you're holding a hot pocket or something, I don't know. But I feel confident with this camera. I think that's really important when you're using a camera for professional work, that you feel confident in the camera, in its autofocus, in how the files are going to look, and that it's going to function and it's going to be professional. I've always been impressed with Canon and the quality of their cameras. I've used some of their cameras like literally till they've been falling apart, and I've never had one not work for me. Touch wood, yeah. But I'm really impressed with this camera, and like I said, I'm looking at it as an investment. I'm looking to shoot with this camera for the next 3 to 5 years, and before upgrading. So that's just my thoughts, guys. This might not be the right camera for you. This is coming from my perspective as someone that's shooting primarily people and portraits and events and that sort of stuff, and it's getting into video more. Not trying to get into video, I'm getting into video more. I'm really loving this camera and enjoying it, and so I think if you're interested in it, do some more research. But it's a great camera, and I have not been disappointed. I've been really impressed, and as I continue to use the camera, like, it's just so solid in everything I do. Everything I ask for it to do, it just does it, and I haven't had a problem. So that's my review of the R6 Mark II. I've been holding off putting it out for a while just because I really wanted to use the camera in a professional setting and get some shoots under my belt. I think I've done 6 now with it, and I feel really confident in recommending the R6 Mark II to anyone that's looking to buy a hybrid photo video camera in that price range. I think you can't go wrong with this camera. It's awesome. The autofocus, the sensor, it's just great. Okay, that's it, guys. Do you own the R6? Are you looking at upgrading? What do you have now? I would really appreciate comments below, and also if you haven't yet, please subscribe. I'm really thankful to the people who have subscribed over the last 4 months or so, as I've really tried to actually put some effort into this channel and become more consistent with uploading and hopefully providing a different perspective. This is mainly from the perspective of someone that uses camera gear. This is less of a technical sort of review of camera gear, but I think there's value in hearing people's perspective that are maybe less technical, but just use the gear and what their experiences are. Okay, guys, so if that's helped you, please hit the like button, subscribe, and I'll see you on the next one. Bye.